Welcome to Myth Informed. I'm your host, Brian Edward. Along with me is President Sean Frasick.
Hey, how's it going?
And on the other side of the camera, we have, and I really like this woman, Lauren Chen,
We love
a.k.a. Roaming Millennial. I saw her way back when she only had 100,000 followers, believe it or not. If you do not know her, Lauren Chen, or Roaming Millennial, is a political and social commentator, host of the podcast Pseudo-Intellectual. Began as a YouTuber over 2 years ago, has since gained over 20 million views on the platform, hundreds of thousands of followers. She's also appeared on Fox News, Daily Wire, Rebel Media, PragerU, and the Rubin Report. Also, a signature on Blaze TV.
Yes.
Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. It's been too long.
It's been way too long, and we got a ton of stuff to talk about. So
we do, and some of it I'm going to dig up the ancient past, going back to October 2019.
It feels so long ago already. I feel like we're already midway through 2020, but we're not. We're in January.
I know.
We're in January, right? We're a day away from my birthday, and the only thing I want for my birthday is an anti-woke day.
Okay,
just no woke scolding for my birthday. That's all I want.
I didn't know it was your birthday tomorrow.
It is.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm hoping for a no woke scolding day, but I'm not going to get it.
That's funny.
So, I'm asking for world peace, right? We'll get that before we'll get no woke scolding. Anyways, speaking of woke scolding, you got into a ton of trouble, like in October, for when you were criticizing a Teen Vogue article. And Teen Vogue is put out some pretty leftist propaganda, if you will.
You know what? In defense of leftists, I don't even want to call some of the worst stuff leftists.
Okay.
Like, I feel like it's just so, I'm on the right wing, but I'm not the type of person who would be like, talking to their target audience, 14, 15-year-olds, about how to do things like anal sex or get abortions without parental permission. Like, that's just, I mean, as someone on the right, I was still hesitant to say, like, oh, yeah, that's just leftist content. That's why people are upset. Like, no, I think it's sexualization of children content. Okay. That's
right. Okay. So you're kind of like Jacobin magazine exists, but it's meant for adults. It's not marketed to 12-year-olds.
Right.
And the specific article you were reading was one that said it was talking about how to get an abortion without telling your parents. Maybe you were underage, but yet there was ways to do it. And you were pretty upset about this and said, we need, this almost calls for a crusade. And I took that as, okay, we need some kind of campaign against this. This is a problem. I see this as a problem. People said the use of the word crusade brought back, I don't know, like thoughts of like Knights Templar and slaying people in the Holy Land. Like, or was it just they thought that this is super, I just couldn't understand the word crusade. People just did not like that at all. And then others said that this is some kind of like dog whistle to the alt-right. I've actually never heard the alt-right use the word crusade.
I didn't hear that.
I've heard both.
Dog whistle to the alt-right?
So what did you mean by crusade?
Interesting.
Well, I have no problem saying we need to crusade against people who are attempting to sexualize 12, 13, 14-year-olds. I think we should have a crusade against pedophilia. Do I think that there should be some sort of, Pope calling all of the warriors to invade the Muslim Holy Land? That's a different usage of the word that I'm not quite sure in context even makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you mentioned like, oh, there was a controversy, I say a lot of things people don't like. So you kind of have to like, okay, which one was that specifically? But and that specific thing, what bothers me is that, you can say this is, I guess, very inflammatory language, dial it back, in which case I could say like, yeah, you're right. I'm very upset. This is passionate language. But, when people share clips out of context and they make it out to be like, oh, yeah, I'm like anti-LGBT or something, or anti-Muslim, when that has nothing to do with the subject of the video, with what I'm talking about at the time. You mentioned alt-right. I don't know what, Teen Vogue's like kitty abortion piece has to do with anything with white nationalists. It's very strange how people, there are certain words that upset them. Yeah. And, if I'm calling for the removal of like, I don't know, Muslims for Israel, I could see that, but they just cannot care less for context, which is what's frustrating.
Yeah. And don't words evolve over time? Like, this is the dark ages. If we're using the word crusade, that means something completely different than if we use it today in the computer age.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
feel like it's not even the word itself. I could say we need to have a, you know, a crusade against I don't know, ineffective environmental policy. No
Crusade
one
against
would bat an eye
poverty.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crusade against hunger.
Yep.
Yes. Like I don't know. I felt like I have a rule now where if I kind of on social media especially tell that someone is like they're not listening, they didn't actually read or
Yeah.
watch what we're arguing about, I just give up. But yeah, there were a lot of people who I think hadn't seen the video, didn't know what I was talking about in context, and were just really happy that someone on the right used the word crusade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In a
it could
strange
be.
way.
I mean, there has been a few like high school teams that have had to get rid of their mascot, the Crusaders. You know,
Well, yeah.
usually dressed up as a knight.
Yeah, there's one group. It's one of the largest Christian groups in like colleges called Campus Crusade for Christ. I think they're really huge. But I remember when I was in college, they were in trouble too because of the word crusade. Some of the student associations didn't like that, but it's it's like a crusade for something. It's not the literal crusades.
And even
Yeah.
it's funny when you talk about jihad. Let's say you were going to have a jihad against this. That doesn't literally mean like ISIS coming in with AK-47s and terrorists. A jihad just means struggle. You could have a jihad against your own vices. You could have a jihad against your personal struggles with alcohol.
And that's actually a great thing to bring up because I think a lot of people wouldn't know exactly what you said. Jihad doesn't mean holy war, it just means struggles. It's actually one of the tenets of Islam. And yeah, Muslims are encouraged to struggle with their faith, with their, all of these things. But, I don't have a problem with clarifying things. Like if someone actually, and I think it was June or Shoe on Head, there was something like this. It may have been this exact thing. And she like messaged me and she was like, "You're kidding, right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." Well, I mean, wasn't kidding, but I don't mean what they said that they think. I didn't mean what they think I meant. And she's like, "Okay, so if you want to come and say, 'Hey, were you serious? What did you mean?' I have no problem like clarifying for anybody, but to immediately take something out of context and try to make it seem like I'm talking about something completely different, saying something I didn't explicitly say or implicitly say. It's tiring."
Okay. The other piece is like they've picked on you for using specifically the word degenerate. Like when talking about I don't know something. I think that some of the drag queen story hours, and I've seen a drag queen on the internet. There's a great Twitter clip that went around saying a drag queen herself or himself or whatever saying this is not for kids. That this is for adults. This is meant for a crowd of drinking age adults in a bar. And then it's good fun. But there's certain things that, you just don't do for kids. Stop mixing these two up. But people hate the word degenerate because, again, they think that's
it's a dog
a
whistle.
dog whistle. Why do you use the word and how are you using it?
Well, I think we actually have done several videos about this. The word degenerate really seems to upset some certain people. And we did one most recently about Brad Palumbo. He's a gay Republican who works for the Washington Examiner. He recently did a piece in DC, apparently they had something called Leather Weekend. I had never heard of it, but it's like for a bunch of leather fetishists. There's like a convention and it's not exclusively LGBT oriented, but it's very heavily marketed that way. There are like POC, LGBT specific leather kink groups and everything. And his whole piece was stop trying to associate the LGBT label with kind of this deviant or degenerate like
fetish,
exhibitionism. And he got a lot of flack for that. And I think what people are not able to separate is that you can criticize what someone who is gay is doing and it not be because they're specifically gay. And I think there's this tendency to conflate, oh, you don't like gay pride parades because there was, a half-naked guy in a gimp suit on a collar. You're calling it degenerate, therefore you hate gay people. And it's like, whoa, hang on. Like you're taking several leaps that I never said. And actually it pains me because on our show, we try our best to be explicit, to talk about how frustrating it must be to be someone like Brad Palumbo and watch these people who are almost trying to co-opt part of your identity and attach it to something you don't support. It's kind of like how I feel looking at the Women's March, which is essentially, you know, the super progressive march, but they're trying to make it all about women. So, you know, I think it's an important part of society to be able to call out certain behaviors as unacceptable. You know, the child drag queen thing is something that I think is very concerning. We've done things about pedophilia and things like that. And I don't want to live in a world where it's not okay to call those behaviors degenerate. And I think some people are so afraid of their own lifestyles being labeled that way that they want that label gone entirely. And it's like, no, we should be able to agree that certain things are still not okay. Why not just call it as it is?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, would you, like, if they said, "Are you kink shaming?" Or do you, what would you say to that?
I would say that if your kink involves like this amount of exhibitionism, then yeah, I'm shaming you a little bit for doing it in public where we can't consent to not seeing that if it's down the street, or you know, especially when it comes to anything to do with pedophilia. Like, I don't care. I'll kink shame pedophiles to the cows come home. You know,
Yes.
on our show, we always make the distinction between, you know, what people would do in the home versus bring out, do in public, and not only that, but try to attach it to an immutable characteristic. I think, you know, we're talking about totally different levels there.
Yeah.
But isn't it? Do you see it the way I see it with like the Crusade thing, or you know the words certain people use? It always seems like anybody that has notoriety, there's this whole wave of people just sitting on the sideline waiting to get that one little bit just so they can attack. I mean, you know, I know we're going to talk about the Joe Rogan Bernie thing. But it just it's just very like opportunistic for these people to be like, oh, that person, they said something I don't like, I'm going to attack. I mean, is that the goal of this public shaming?
Oh, absolutely. And what's frustrating is that I'll have people say, "Oh, but do you you believe this then? You believe that then?" And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I think if you were that curious, you would watch beyond the soundbite and actually watch the video where I talk about the subject for a good 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying before. I don't really see much utility in arguing with people who are intent on, I guess, not hearing your side of the story. And it's frustrating. And there have been times, especially like when I was first starting out my channel, where I really did believe that if I was careful enough with what I said, if I had enough disclaimers about what I did mean and I did not mean, then people wouldn't be able to do that because I would have been clear.
Yeah.
But I very quickly realized that it's not about that for them. I mean, we're living in a world where even people like, and we're going to talk about this in a second more, but Bernie Sanders and Joe Rogan are being accused of like being sexist or being racist. So with these people, they don't actually care what your opinions are.
Yeah.
They just know that they're different from their own and they want to shut you down for it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I just like your point, too. Yeah, the kink shaming, but you're talking about specifically the public aspect of this. And that's a really good point because, you just don't seem like the kind of like really care what goes behind closed doors. So
yeah,
I've,
and I mean,
I've never
like
heard you
another
say
one,
like
which
that.
I guess we were kink shaming, is when you know, this Vice did a whole documentary on I forget what fornicophobia. It's when you have sex with bugs, which I guess was kink shaming. But it's like this guy is doing a whole promotional video about it. You know, he calls himself an instructor. It's not like I'm going through people's Google histories and trying to, I don't know, decide what's normal and what's not.
How is that a kink? That sounds like something to be on My Strange Addiction.
They have sex with bugs?
They have sex with bugs. It's this whole thing. You should, I mean, look it up, but also don't look it up. This guy was talking about how he'll put bugs, like worms, in a jar and just have his way with that. He's talking about this to Vice, and he's like promoting it. He calls himself, I think, a fornicophilia educator.
The first thing I thought was he's probably like hung like a mouse. Because I don't know.
Or micro penis.
Yeah,
those are kind of the same thing.
Wow. Oh,
it's terrible.
I gotcha.
Right,
Yeah. Do you wanna?
Do you
want to do
the dashing rogue fired out? The map is not a territory. The word is not a thing. Not exactly sure what that means. We followed up with degenerate is great because it shocks the person. It is self-reflecting. Problem with SJWs, they lack the self.
Yeah, interesting.
You know, there's certainly it does, I suppose, shock the person. You are supposed to do that, but I think your point too, like king shaming. My general thought is, you know, I don't like it, but there is a difference in public. Right, there is a consent
Yeah.
thing, and that is a thing. That is a thing. So
Yeah.
I think that even in the kink communities would talk about stuff like that. If you're going to do stuff in public, you have to be extra careful. So
Yeah. So
especially with what Brad's piece was saying is that, it's one thing to do it, it's another thing to do it in public, it's another thing to do it in public and attach yourself to the
Yeah.
LGBT community as almost ambassadors.
it's a good point.
Yeah, so I was interested to get your take on the Rogan Bernie Sanders situation. So Bernie was on Joe Rogan's show. They had a good conversation. Joe's really good. He's a really good conversationalist. And Joe had said that he would endorse Bernie for president. And then all of a sudden you had all these people online start going crazy. What's your take on this?
I think it's funny because watching this whole thing unfold, people have tried to paint Joe Rogan as controversial.
Yeah.
He has the biggest podcast on the planet right
Yeah.
now. I think he's as mainstream as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
But I think they've never liked Joe Rogan because he platforms, quote, Nazis, right? He's had people like, Candace Owens on his show, Ben Shapiro,
Jordan Peterson,
right?
Alex
Several times, if not
Jones has been
mistaken.
on there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Milo was on there, right?
Milo is on there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Sam
automatically
Harris,
they don't like
Brett.
Joe Rogan. It doesn't matter how many lefties he has on. It doesn't matter that he's had Kyle Kalinske on, Bernie
Mhm.
Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard. That doesn't matter. He's immediately stained because of any willingness to talk to someone who's on the right. So they already didn't like Joe, and then him kind of saying he'd vote for Bernie. Right now, I think there's I don't know what you guys think about it, but it seems like there's a concerted effort to bring Bernie down in favor of Elizabeth Warren, and I think this was just convenient for them.
That's what I heard a ton of Bernie supporters say. So it was split in that some were saying, look, this looks bad on us because this guy hosts a podcast for a bunch of reactionaries. It's one thing for Joe to vote for him. It's another thing to tout the endorsement. And then the others were just saying, are you kidding me? Of course we should accept the endorsement. And furthermore, this is an attack from the establishment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which it is. Is
I
it
think
an attack from establishment?
I think it's insane because, I
don't know.
Joe literally jump-started Yang's campaign. When Yang went on Rogan, that was a huge bump for him. And
every presidential candidates want to get it on a show, he said.
Exactly.
And he said he'll only meet with the ones that he likes.
Exactly. And it's like this, in my opinion, it's a huge opportunity for the Democrats. And, they're burning bridges. It just happens time and time again. They don't know how to operate within the normal world. They're just constantly burning bridges. It's insane to me.
Yeah, and especially with the clip that, like you mentioned, Brian, the Bernie Sanders campaign did put out. Some people are like, oh, they shouldn't have done that. It's the most popular podcaster says a bunch of really good things about you, about how you're consistent, which if you're a progressive and you look at Bernie Sanders, he's been advocating for these progressive policies for longer than most of these woke activists have even been alive for.
That's true.
Right. So you can say a lot of things about him, but you can't say he's not being genuine, he's not really committed to it, because he is. And Rogan brought that up. I don't see anything wrong with the Sanders campaign, putting out that video. Something I think Tim Pool mentioned was he hopes that Sanders campaign ran it by Joe Rogan before they posted it, which I can maybe see. Maybe Joe Rogan doesn't want to be affiliated that much with the campaign. I don't know, but that's a completely different issue. And what these mad people on Twitter are going after Bernie for and Rogan for, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was really a clip where Barry Weiss asked him, "Who do you think you're going to vote for right now in the primary?" And he thought, and he goes, "Right now, probably going to vote for Bernie."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was he said. So I don't think none of this was planned. I don't think.
And especially, I think it was Kyle Kalinske made a good point. It's someone who doesn't always agree with the left is now saying he would support this left-wing candidate. So it's is that not a good thing? Is that not the point of everything you're trying to do with all of these campaigns? Get people to support you?
Yeah.
It's a strange thing to punish people for supporting the candidate you like, because I don't know how genuine these people were being, but I saw some people saying, "Oh, I really like you, Bernie, but this isn't it. Joe Rogan's terrible." It's maybe he's coming around then if he likes the same candidate you do. It seems like a strange thing to complain about.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
and
it's not like Bernie had to compromise a position.
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
his endorsement.
And Joe he has a large audience, obviously. There's a ton of centrists in there. There's a ton of people that are politically active. There's a ton of normies.
Well, there's a ton of apolitical people,
yeah,
too.
as I say, there's a ton of just regular people that listen to Joe. Joe has done a great job of, like, moving into the mainstream, like you said, Lauren. And, you know, he's one of these guys. He's been in Hollywood for years. He ran Fear Factor forever. He smokes weed on his show. I mean, the guy's, like, extreme liberal. This is the guy you want in your corner. And it's just... You know, it's unfortunate. So this whole guilt by association thing that's like driving me nuts. And, you know, we experience it with some of the things we do. But, you know, what happened to the country where we can't talk to people that we disagree with? And we can't be friends with people that we disagree with? I mean, it's
or civil.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the civil thing is a good thing to bring up because, I mean, we've seen people like, Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a huge thing, but some people were actually upset that he
Yep.
shook Trump's hand. Some people were upset that Ellen DeGeneres was at I want to say football game with George Bush. And it's like, really, this is what should we just shun people, refuse to interact with them in any way if we don't like their opinions?
Yeah. And there's no path to redemption. You know, one of the other things that happened obviously yesterday was Kobe. It's a tragic accident. Kobe and his daughter and 7 other people were in a helicopter and it crashed. And that was just kind of like a shock to everyone because, you know, whether you're a fan of basketball or Kobe, I mean, Kobe has inspired a lot of people just through his sheer competitiveness. The guy was just a competitive animal, and that was part of his brand. And, yeah, he made mistakes in the past. You know, 2003, he had a, extramarital affair. People learn and they and can improve, you know, like where is this, you know, we're seeing people, I don't know, leftists, I guess, going after his character. Oh, he's a rich person. Oh, he's a rapist. He's this and that. It's like, what is wrong with people these days? I mean, it's just sad to see it play out, you know?
No, for sure. And I think there's this idea that we're defined by our worst actions.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to be honest, I'm not super familiar with Kobe Bryant, but I mean, I saw people within, I think it wasn't even kind of confirmed yet. It was when people had just started reporting that he may have died. People were publishing or reposting some of the allegations against him or some of the things that he had done. And it's like, okay, but he was still a person who's now potentially dead. He has, you know, potentially a widow who's been left behind and some daughters. Like, I don't know. It's not like we need to vet this person because he's applying for the presidency, right? Like, what does posting all of this really, are you saying we shouldn't be sad that this person has died? Like, I'm confused by what you want to happen now, right? Because it's not like there's any benefit to be had, right? It's not like we're preventing him from getting something he would otherwise. He's dead now. Why do that?
Yeah.
It seems weird. Like, we'd have to remember Martin Luther King as just another philanderer. Or just another guy who cheats on his wife,
or with a criminal record.
That would be terrible.
He went to jail.
Right, but that wasn't considered like the bad thing.
Yeah, I know, but you know what
still.
I'm saying. I mean, it's just like people make mistakes. Everyone's human. That's the whole point of.
Well, the whole rape allegation, like, if that's real, that does color it. But like the facts are unclear on this.
Yeah,
you know, this was settled out of court. If he was a convicted rapist, this would definitely change the calculus.
Yes,
but he's.
Absolutely. And you know, the sad thing is, I mean, he was coaching his daughter. She could have been the future of the WNBA. I mean, to be the Black Mamba's daughter. I mean, that's the future of the WNBA that died in the plane crash, too. I mean, you want to talk about women's rights and equality and stuff. He was really active in his kid's life. And that's really, you know, people make mistakes. You learn from them. You move on. You improve as an individual. And we should be applauding that, you know. It's just.
But I think there's like this nastiness, right? There's so much vitriol. You can't let someone who did something you didn't like be happy or left alone. It's like you always have to be on the attack in these people's minds.
Yeah, but we heard like there was one particular post that said that, you know, it's a requirement as a leftist to be glib when a multi-millionaire or a super rich person dies.
Rapist.
So not through the rapist in there, which again But even let's cancel that out. Just that you need to be glib when a super rich person dies.
To be a leftist.
Like, why can't like that hating the rich is not uplifting the poor.
No.
And I don't think there's anything good to hating on the rich. There's no what's good on just hating a group of people that you don't know. I don't get that.
What's interesting is that, like, I get that there are some people who want, you know, enormous amounts of wealth redistribution when it comes to millionaires and billionaires. But I'm seeing like that's always been around, but now like you're mentioning it's almost like this personal contempt
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
Right? Like you are a bad person. It's not
Right.
just if I had my way, your tax rates would be different. It's like, no, you've done these awful things. And I've seen that kind of attitude when there have been a couple stories of either people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, like wealthy people giving money to charity for this or that. And you would think a lot of people would be like, oh, that's great. You voluntarily, even though you didn't have to, done something nice for other people. But it's all saying, well, that money is stolen in the first place. You didn't earn it anyway. And on all of that stuff. And it's like, I'm no fan of someone like Jeff Bezos, but can we at least give credit where it's due? He didn't have to do that, but he did.
Well,
Yeah.
he created a supply chain that's like essentially unmatched. I mean, that's what he did. Like he's selling products that other people are making, but that supply chain is it's something. Yeah, and he didn't steal. Like AOC said to Ta-Nehisi Coates, like just straight up said he stole that $1 billion. He didn't create it.
Well, and I think what's more disgusting is it's the escalation of it. It's like this sentiment always existed with celebrities, rich people, whatever. There was always resentment and stuff, but now with social media, it's turned into like this challenge of who can be the nastiest.
Yeah.
And you get the most street cred, and it's really disgusting. That's why, like, I don't even, outside of like promoting our stuff, I typically don't watch anything on social media because it like sucks all the happiness out of my soul,
Mm-hmm.
I
No.
said
If that's
soul.
the thing,
As
it
an
says the atheist.
As an atheist, I
Right.
said soul. So,
But it's true. Like I've gone kind of through periods of more social media use, less social media use, and when I'm not on Twitter as much, reading all of that negativity, and I sound like a snowflake, I suppose, but it does drain you. I think when you're surrounded by all of that, like I don't want to assume that everybody is like the worst people on Twitter.
Yeah.
which I think kind of becomes a possibility if you spend too much time on there. I think you can become jaded, but they've done studies. Most people aren't on Twitter. Most of the tweets come from a small percentage of the people who even are on Twitter. So we're talking about a very small fraction of people. But yeah, it can be, I guess, demoralizing sometimes, all the stuff you see on there.
Yeah.
No, but there's also a lot of good stuff. In fact, Dan Campbell, thanks for the super chat, said, quote, we aren't defined by our worst actions and we aren't the sum of our shortcomings. Very good point. Like, I really like that, especially the sum of our shortcomings. It seems like every attack compilation video is you saying either a dumb thing or something weird, and that is a sum of your shortcomings kind of video, or perceived shortcomings.
Yeah. No, and I think it's kind of things like Twitter, even Instagram, like these short mediums, they lend themselves to those types of things. And I know what Jordan Peterson, I think he's trying to launch ThinkSpot, or like that's his social media platform. I think there's like a word minimum, like you can't have too short a post or something like that, because he wants to encourage more substantial conversation. I might be getting that wrong or something, but that's what I at least understood. And I don't know how marketable that is, but I understand his point.
Yeah.
I think we are losing something by having everything be in like 128 characters or less, 2-minute video clips or less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's getting shorter and shorter, and that's, I mean, even our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. It's really, it's a little insane. Brian, you want to read the
Yeah, Miles Kinslow hopped in and says, "Hey guys, great conversation. I'd rather be personally taught by Jeff Bezos about success than his money." Meaning, like, I think what he's saying is like, rather be taught by Jeff Bezos than tax the bejesus out of him and then get a handout. I think that's kind of what he was going for.
Yeah, and it's funny because there are, I think, kind of two attitudes. You can either look at someone who's more successful than you and see it as an aspirational story, or you can be resentful about it. And maybe it's not like an either or, but I feel like as just our culture, we're moving more toward resentment of people who have what we don't want, and that, like, not just wealth, even when it comes to dating, right? There's a whole conversation about incels, and I think we all need to learn to be a bit more maybe gracious. I'm not sure what it is.
And onto like also just onto book titles, like who gets to write, right? And it turns out, you write something. Oh, turns out you're the wrong race. now it's bad.
Well, and the funny thing is, like, that's why we like doing the events. Rucka made a pretty interesting comment. He said, I look at your guys' events as the internet coming to life, which is kind of true. But at the same time, we see how the interactions between people in real life are completely
different.
Yeah.
Than you would see on Twitter. I mean, we've never had fights. We've never had people even get in people's faces. I mean, it's never. That's the issue.
Well, we did have Antifa at the last after party have to be pushed across the street, but outside of that,
I'm talking about the people that actually go to the events. I'm not talking about they're the cancel culture in real life. I guess wannabes. But no, I mean that's the thing. It's like when you meet someone face to face, it's a completely different interaction than 250 characters or whatever. I mean, so
and even people that disagree, and that's the thing. People think that progressives don't come to our event, and they're just wrong. They do, and often you can't tell who's from who because you start out a normal conversation, then you ask the person their politics, and you're kind of shocked because you're like, wow, we disagree, but yet we're getting along great, which is often the best conversations.
Yeah.
So
and I remember one of the, I guess, highlights from your last event, the Minds IRL event, was where it was like me and Daisy, two conservatives, and then, gosh, who else was on there? I think it was Michael on.
No, oh man, Tara Devlin.
Yeah, Tara Devlin.
Yeah,
and
Mike is.
Tara Devlin.
She was the only American. So we had Daisy, yourself, and then Tara and Mike, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
Mike was on it. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Some very different political beliefs on that stage, but we're all coming together in our resentment of, the big tech giants.
Yes.
Which I thought was amazing.
That was amazing,
because there are a lot of things where I'm not saying we agree on everything, but there are, I think, enough things in common where we should be able to get some movement done, or at least some sort of consensus. Even if we can't agree on what the action is, hopefully we can at least identify the problem together. That would still be something.
And another thing too, like Mike, the Mike we were talking about is Michael Rowlands, who is Music Man Mike on the internet and on YouTube. Like, it started out extremely critical of us. Like, he made a mocking video of us at MythCon 4, but then we invited him to be part of it. He was part of 2 different events. We've grown, although our politics are still very far apart, we've established a friendship. And the fact that we're friends and nice to each other makes me a heck of a lot more amenable to his viewpoint than if he's shouting at you. So it seems like a lot of this yelling and smoke scolding is so counterproductive, because if you actually befriend the people, they might listen. But you might change their mind.
But that's what I'm talking about with like this whole guilt by association. Like Daryl Davis brought up a really good point last year. It's like, his whole thing was talking to white nationalists and befriending them and getting them to kind of look at his point of view. And a lot of times there's success where they step away from the extremist position. It's like, the only way to do that is if we have conversations with people that vehemently disagree with us, to move some of that. It's like, but if you do that, then online, like, or even in real life, Antifa called Daryl Davis a white supremacist. It's like, this is insane. Like, obviously he's not a white supremacist. He's a black blues musician. like
it's a weird type of white supremacist.
But I mean, it's that whole guilt by association. I just can't stand it,
And for people like that, what I always wonder is like, okay, people who disagree with you exist. That's not up for debate. That's just reality.
Yeah.
If we can't try to talk to them, what should we do with them?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do with these people? Okay, you want to deplatform them. You don't want to let them speak anywhere. You want them to be too afraid to like literally, are we going to just fragment them off from society?
Yeah.
Are we going to force them into hiding? Do you want them to just kind of exile themselves? Like, where do you want this to end? Because I would love to see everybody not just have the same opinions, but at least maybe come away from the extremes enough where we can happily live together and healthily live together. Yeah. But when you look at that kind of, I don't know, like censorious behavior, vitriolic behavior, it's like you're only going to make things worse. Yes. And being civil doesn't mean you agree with someone. It just means you're willing to at least hear them out in the hopes that they do the same for you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, the Quilliam Foundation in Britain is a de-radicalization group, and that's their mission, is to de-radicalize extremists. Because what do you do with somebody that says, I'm very sympathetic to ISIS. They haven't committed a terrorist act, but they're like, I really agree what they're saying, and I'm very sympathetic with the jihadis. You put that person in jail? Well, what do? They have not committed a crime. They just believe very extreme things. It's the same thing with the white nationalists and others. Like, you've got to do something, and I don't think putting them in jail and locking them out of society completely.
Re-education.
Is a good idea. Yeah.
And I think this is all especially worrying when we look at how young some of these people who are, like, I don't know, like, lured into radicalism actually are. Because like with the internet, I think a lot of the people who post the worst things we see online on the left and on the right, they are very young. And I think it scares me, the idea that, I was thinking about this the other day. What if it was, I was 10, maybe 12 years younger, and I was that person online who like went down this rabbit hole of bad ideas. Would I have then been condemned for the rest of my life, unable to find a job, find friends, and things like that? So I think, I don't just believe that people really can change, especially their political views. I don't know about you guys. My views are not the same as like they were
not
8, 10 years. Heck, even 5 years ago, I'm a bit different. But we're also looking at people who are kind of probably young, right? Yeah. And I want to extend that to Antifa as well. I think if you are someone who showed up, tried to get our event canceled, I don't think your life should be ruined forever. No. I don't think that at all. I would hope that you would see the error of your ways. We could talk about it. But I don't want anyone's life ruined.
Yeah,
and
for racists,
I
want
the next one or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if somebody would say, they're racist. What I want for racists is for them to stop being racist. Done.
Yeah.
Like go then. If you are, then go out and do your business.
Yeah.
Another thing that came up too that didn't get a lot of pull, but I didn't look deeply into it, but the idea of like Martin Sellner, who I think is a legit white nationalist, was then denied a banking account by Chase. So this is another thing. So what do you do with an extremist? Do you deny them a bank account? Now, this is getting really weird. It's like you can see why somebody might not want to employ that person in a high executive profile position. Okay, I get that. But a bank account?
Right.
It seems like you need that. Like, I mean, you're going to stick a guy with money orders or something. It just seems like this is actually probably going to further radicalization, not ebb it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with regard to Martin Sellner specifically, I tried to look him up, but a lot of his stuff was in German, so I'm really not familiar with his specific views. But someone whose views I am familiar with is Laura Loomer, and she went through something similar. I think her bank account from Chase Bank was closed, and there are a lot of people who were like, "Good, don't platform that." I think we're kind of getting to a point where people may be asking, well, if we know someone's address, should we be giving them utilities? Like, does a white nationalist, does neo-Nazi, whatever, should they have the right to use water even, or electricity? Why would we want to enable them to be comfortable? And these are all like, it's a scary path, right?
It really is.
Not just
because those definitions change. I mean, we've been called Nazis and white supremacists.
Yeah.
So
felons, violent felons have rights in prison, right? That you cannot cross. And it's like, okay, what are you going to do? You're going to starve them? You can't do that. There's certain rights even for people that are beyond, that have broken the law and have been convicted. I mean, just if you hold odious views, that's totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for things like, especially when it comes to government things like equal protection under the law, right? Like that's a thing. And I think what worries me is that anytime someone says, "Oh, so you would want this Nazi to, be able to access this service or that service," Brian, like, you're right, or I'm not sure if that was Sean. Sorry, I can't see you guys, but having someone else in charge of defining who is and who is not such and such, that's scary. That's something that should worry everybody.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, because those definitions change, and obviously,
I mean, Joe Rogan was just called a white nationalist.
Exactly.
Right. So once you get the alt-right, so to speak, well, now who's next? Alt-right adjacent?
Yeah.
Who's that? The alt-right?
We've heard alt-right adjacent. So what does that mean? Alt-right adjacent, just not alt-right then? Is that what that
What's
means?
alt-right? Is that different than alt-right perpendicular? Like, is that, I don't know. Didn't know if there's a distinction. I like nuance.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
No, it's extremely scary, and I don't know. It just, I was talking to Brian about this. Do you think it's getting. Do you think the wokeness, the the ultimate PC correctness, do you think that's receding or do you think that's increasing? Because I'm on the side that we're starting to see it come back, like based on some of the entertainment I'm seeing. Like I'm starting to see kind of people like wake up and come back to their senses, and Brian thinks it's increasing.
I think you guys are both kind of right. I think the general mainstream attitude toward it is one of people are tired. I think we saw that with Dave Chappelle's comedy special, Bill Burr's, Ricky Gervais's recent Golden Globes hosting. I think a lot of people are like just tired of the moralizing, being overly politically correct, right? Kind of the assumption that if you use this word in the wrong way, regardless of your intention, that means you're racist, sexist, blah, blah, blah. I think that's on the decline, that kind of attitude. But I think if we look among the people who have always been this way and certain institutions, they're becoming more insular and more radical, right? So it's kind of both. We're becoming fragmented as a society. And I read things like, CNN, they put out a social media post saying that Joe Rogan has a history of transphobia, white nationalism, sexism, or whatever. And it's like, this is CNN. So I think in those kind of groups, those people they just keep going further and further off the deep end because they're kind of in their own echo chamber already. So they don't have anyone to bring them back. For mainstream culture, though, I think it is starting to kind of calm down a little bit.
So I'll have you guess again here. Well, Keith Wynn fired out a super chat. It says message retracted, but underneath he wrote, "Love the discussion, Lauren. Lauren is great."
Oh, thank you.
Well, I'll concur and agree with that. So another
we didn't retract that, by the way. Hashtag free speech.
So I have another prediction then. Like, speaking of, like, we don't really know whether this is going up or down. What about Bernie? Will he cave to the pressure and kind of delete the tweet? Like evidence. So I think so. We'll get your opinion because his socialism and his economics have been solid. They've never changed. He came out of the womb that way, right? But he bet Cenk Ungar. Do I pronounce that right? Cenk Ungar. But he supported him, but then some crap came about of Cenk, and then he backed off. So he's given into the woke school before, so I think so.
My argument
Michael,
is
our
no.
producer, thinks no.
I think
what do you
no,
think?
Because I think it would be the smartest move for him not to do anything and just ignore it.
So I guess ladies last here.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think
I
I agree with you in some ways about Bernie as a whole person. His economic policies when it comes to things like Medicare for all they've been very consistent. But I think if we look at Bernie now versus him in 2016, he has started incorporating more of the intersectional message into his campaign, right? He's more woke. He's more intersectional than he used to be. Before it was very much about focusing on 1% working class, yada, yada, yada. This time around, he's talking about how someone, white doesn't really know how to be poor or something like that. And it's like he's giving in more and more, I think, and I think that might have maybe something to do with the team that's surrounding him now.
Or is it just the culture? Like the fact that instead of class, the workers unite, the proletariat unite, so to speak. If it's not going to be a class struggle, then maybe if you have a racial or an identity struggle, maybe you just hop that different train.
Yeah. I could see it going either way because Bernie, you can love him. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he seems like a nice guy. But I think what we've seen is that he doesn't have that same toughness that a lot of other politicians do. I think he lets himself be bullied sometimes. We saw that in 2016 where I think there were like Black Lives Matter activists who kind of hijacked his event. He let it happen.
That was Marissa Janae.
Yeah, we had her at MythCon 5.
She was at MythCon 5.
Yeah,
Marissa,
I remember that actually. She was with Derek, that panel, right?
Yeah. That's right.
We saw him on stage with Hillary Clinton. I would have pushed back so much harder if I were called a sexist than I wasn't, and I don't think Bernie Sanders is. So,
you mean Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Elizabeth Warren. I would have pushed back much more against Elizabeth Warren, and I don't know why Bernie didn't. I think there's a good chance he might end up deleting it.
He doesn't think a woman can be president.
I don't think he said it personally.
I don't think he said it either. I think that's ridiculous.
But his economic policies, he stands up to. He defends them, like a junkyard dog. But yeah, these other things, I think he's going to. But Michael could be right. He's snickering over there at me.
I just have to point
also,
out.
another thing with the Bernie Sanders thing is even if he thought a woman couldn't be president, why would he tell a woman that? Like,
that's what I was
saying.
Exactly. Like that's the worst person to tell, especially someone that might be running at some point.
And it's like, okay, not only are you calling him a sexist, then you're calling him a stupid sexist, which I don't think is Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, and I got to point out, I love, Lauren, how you have chose like the centrist answers on these topics, and we're the centrists over here. And when we're taking hardline answers on these, it's interesting. And one of the things that keeps popping up too, I always see, is that YouTube gets a bad rap for promoting content, like radicalizing people. And one of the things I noticed, it's like Hulu, Netflix, Vudu, pretty much any other entertainment content creator does the same thing. They literally do the same thing. They if you like this, you might like this.
Yeah.
If you like this, you might. It's like how I will stand up for YouTube on that. I think that's
their algorithm doesn't send you down the rabbit hole. It's like if you're looking up chess a lot, it's probably going to link you to a lot of chess videos.
Exactly.
I will stand up for YouTube in the past. I'm not going to stand up for YouTube now, because I think what they've done now is, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I noticed the other day I was kind of like in search for some like new political videos, and I realized that for the past solid year, I have not been recommended. I haven't found any new political channels. Right? I don't know if you guys have found that, because usually the way I sometimes search for specific stuff, but I'm a lazy, passive person.
Yeah.
Usually the way I find new videos, creators and stuff like that is because they're recommended to me.
Yeah.
So like, every few weeks I'll get into a new makeup channel, new movie review channel, new dance channel, whatever, and I realize, hang on a second, I haven't been getting any new political content recommended to me. It's always Fox News. I'm not subscribed to Fox News. I like independent stuff. That's why I'll watch YouTube.
Yeah.
But I realized the other day I haven't gotten any new creators, and that's sad for me, because it's like there are so many people out there probably that I'm just never going to be able to find, because they're not recommended to me, because they probably won't turn up in search results, and that's not what YouTube used to be.
That's interesting. I'll let Brian answer that, because he is the
I don't know, but it's probably sample
consumer
bias right now. What I got recent was the LBC, which is I think the London broadcast company. It's where the show the network that Majid Nawaz is on.
Yeah.
And so that one kind of came up randomly, and so I was watching a bit of that. And then there were some others, and all of them they were a little bit more corporate though. And I think they did say that they were going to try to rank those kind of news sources. I didn't see it as like a heavily biased, but again, this is a small n number, so I can't, it's anecdotal completely.
Yeah, but I do miss the days where I would be watching something and then I would be recommended some random cartoon avatar channel, and then I can, just find a new channel and start binging their content. Actually, he was in the chat. I don't know if he is still there, but one of my YouTubers that I watch consistently every video, like someone like Sargon, who I'm always watching, is Actual Justice Warrior, and I think he may have been one of the last people that I kind of discovered through just random chance. And I think you're right. Like I get recommended Fox, I get recommended CNN. I'm subscribed to the Young Turks, so I don't, hard to, obviously I'd be recommended them, but it's just not what it used to be. And I blame YouTube for that, but at the same time, I recognize that they had to make changes, or they didn't have to. They felt pressured to make changes because people were literally accusing them of making Nazis.
It was like
which is
New York
a bad
Times.
place to be in.
New York Times went after them. I
Yeah.
mean, so many outlets. It's like that's ridiculous. I mean, Netflix, you don't even have to choose the thing and it'll start playing whatever you're highlighting.
But then you can just cite pseudoscience, right? You cite the report by Becca Lewis, of which I think you're a part of,
yes.
right? As is Joe Rogan and a whole host of others, right? Many of the MythCon guests speakers were on that.
Poole,
Tim Poole, all over. And that's not a rigorous study. It's not peer reviewed in any way. And then the other pieces like the Southern Poverty Law Center, again, they weave together stuff like this, and they'll get cited by the New York Times. And like, again, no one's peer-reviewed this. This is just, it's dripping with bias. How, like, I just don't know why big companies are moved by that kind of stuff. Like, you got to know that it's biased. I mean, Facebook seems to be aware of this. Right, that they're meeting with conservative. They're very aware that there's two sides to things, and it seems like other companies aren't.
Yeah, and I think Google is one of those companies that, especially, I mean, Google's a big company, but when I look at how YouTube has been handling things, and to me, like, it's not just conservative content that's getting screwed. People say like it's more so them. I think okay, maybe, but I mean, channels like I think David Pakman's have been affected, right? If you're not like corporate approved political message, people like Fox News or CNN, then this is hurting you. They just view it as, okay, this is safe. We're not going to take any risks. No one will get too mad if it's CNN and Fox because they're safe. We just won't, if it's just some random person we don't know who we can't vet, we're not going to recommend them, include them in algorithms and things like that, which is, that was what made YouTube. Now it's like FoxTube or CNN Tube, which is not what I think most people want.
But there's other ways to get out there too. You can make an end around and get the word out on Twitter and send that.
You're exactly right. Yeah. And that's what anytime someone asks me like, oh, I'm thinking about starting a channel, what should I do? That's what I tell them. Make sure you're everywhere, right? Don't just rely on YouTube or Twitter. Like try to be as many places as possible.
Yeah. Well, I have a question for you,
but real quick,
I'm sorry.
Keith Wynn said intersectionality fails. I tend to agree in so much as like we can divide ourselves down to the individual, and that is my kind of intersectionality.
When you group people, it's never good.
Right, the individual.
So Twitter took a stance on political ads, and they said that they're not going to allow political ads to be purchased on their platform, while Facebook said, of course, we're going to. What do you think? Do you think that's a smart move for Twitter?
That was one of the stories where I didn't know at first, because at face value, it almost sounds like what a lot of people who are against like Google censorship are asking for, apolitical platforms. But then, and someone else brought this up. I don't want to take credit for this argument. It was noted that, but who defines what is and what is not political, right? Because there are a lot of people out there who might think, oh, I want to educate people about fetal development during, the first and second trimester. That's science. That's not political.
Yeah.
But
but you referred the whole time as like a human fetus, or you kept using the word human, and you're perceived to be pro-life.
Right, exactly. Or someone might do something about like, hey guys, this is what China's putting out for CO2, and like again, that's science, but is that political, right?
Politics,
a lot of people were kind of raising questions about how would exactly this be enforced.
I know,
and I think that's a good point. So I'm not even sure that in theory, I don't have a problem saying you can't buy political ads. Like I don't think that's a free speech violation or anything like that. But then in practice, I do worry that the implementation wouldn't be consistent.
Well, and my concern is just the more of the infantilizing of the population. Political ads have been on television for decades, so and so thinks this, and it's always the same voice, It's like
and they're always in black and white versus
it's always
color.
in black and white. It's like and then they killed babies, or whatever. And it's like, okay, obviously we could see that and be like, okay, that's a political ad. We're not going to buy into that. This is like the infantilizing of the population. So Twitter is just turning away a revenue source that they desperately need because they're in debt.
I'm sure it's a small portion. I mean, Facebook, it was a tiny portion.
Of course, but like Lauren said, where's the line? Because if the gap keeps widening, all of a sudden it could be a potential large source. But the other thing it's doing is now you just empowered the influencers such as Lauren, Tim, the people with the gigantic followings. You've just empowered them as given them the opportunity for people with political messages to now hire influencers. So now Twitter's completely taken out.
But they're trying to make a point though. Like it would be the same thing if like a company decided,
it's a terrible business
I'm going to spend a little bit extra on biodegradable burger holders, and the other companies are like, well, I'm going to still use the styrofoam. that you're making a statement to say, hey, we think this is bad. We're gonna do it the biodegradable.
Yeah,
way.
but from a business standpoint, it doesn't make any sense, especially when all of your competitors.
But
are
conceivably, you could
eating up
say,
that
hey,
market.
I like this company that has the biodegradable things. I'm going to buy from them.
No.
Or I'm going to go to Twitter because they
Okay, if
share my
you
values.
all right, if you think them saying no to political ads is going to attract people to view content that's not political, that's insane. Like Twitter,
Yeah, especially it being Twitter.
exactly. It's like Twitter. That's their whole thing. Like they should be the ones out in front selling political ads. And it also makes it unfair for those with smaller audiences, like the Yangs of the world. Like when Yang first started, like the underdogs, the independents. It's like harder for them to get their message out there. At least buying the ads puts them on the same level. Yeah, they have to pay a little more but at least. You can, because someone like
Yang's
Biden,
raising a lot of money.
someone with Biden with like I don't know how many million followers he has versus someone like Yang when he first started. I mean, there's at least you can pay to equal the playing
Well,
field
I
a
think
little bit.
we have stumbled upon the question of how do we handle campaign finance in
Yeah.
general, which is that was my least favorite topic or subject when I was doing my poli-sci major. It's like, and Sean, you make a great point, and that's like I know that I don't like the way anything to do with political ads works, but at the same time, I think it's almost harmful to the little guy in some ways when you say that you can't purchase these ads because then, like you said, we're trading on influence, which favors the establishment.
Yep.
So I don't know what the answer is.
No, I think they just I think personally the social media platforms just need to say, look, we're a platform. We're not going to censor what people do. They do what they do. Take us out of the mix. Pay us the money for ads, whatever.
But it's not like rumors and lies don't spread on social media.
Yeah,
they
as
do.
Long as you're not,
Why,
as long as you're not breaking the law.
But if it's a
And
political
that's
lie,
it.
why is it any worse than, like, I don't know, somebody thought that, like the guy that at Charlottesville that owned the car, they ran the license plate and it gets called. He's at a wedding. He didn't own the car, right? So a rumor spread that, negatively affected somebody. Why is that somehow less bad than a political fib?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, actually, have you guys seen, this is kind of related, places like Instagram have been, and I think maybe Facebook, I guess, as well, because it's, with Instagram, they've begun like fact checking posts.
Oh.
Yeah, Facebook started doing that. Yeah.
And I
did
forget
see that.
what account it was, but I saw someone who I follow on Instagram had one of their posts. I'm not sure if it was censored or removed, or there was like a little disclaimer on it for being apparently untruthful.
Yeah.
Now, I don't remember what the actual post was, if it actually was or wasn't, but I think that's...
Wow.
It's scary. And I'll hear people always make this argument, well, what about anti-vaxxers and what about flat earthers and stuff? It's like, okay, yes, again, we're infantilizing the population by telling them they can't look at the evidence for arguments, It's like, let them post until they're blue in the face. Who cares? I don't care if someone thinks the world is flat, that it's like, obviously it's not, like what all we're going to do is censor them, and then they're going to get this momentum behind them for being martyrs, and like they grow underground. And I'd rather see the enemy, face to face versus...
You can't tell. Like, Trump is a racist. Israel's an apartheid state, right? How do you... Those aren't factual based questions. Those are assertions.
Yeah.
And I think people, nowadays ideas are treated like the coronavirus or worse, right? People think the only way to stop the spread is to essentially cordon them off, like quarantine them, which is, I mean, I remember after the Christchurch shooting, terrible thing, obviously, Jordan Peterson, I forget whether he was mentioned in the manifesto or something like that. People were linking him to this, and there was at least one bookseller who stopped selling his book, 12 Rules for Life, because they were afraid it was radicalizing people. And it's like, okay, you can literally buy Mein Kampf.
Yeah.
Right? You can literally buy that. And I don't
point.
think there's been any huge spike in neo-Nazis or actual self-avowed people following Hitler. So this idea that, people cannot think critically at all, literally anything they hear, they'll believe.
Yeah.
And not to mention that 12 Rules for Life is even if you were to believe everything from it, you wouldn't be a Nazi. It's just, it's kind of concerning. And if people really were that incapable of critical thought, then I wouldn't want to live in a democracy, because apparently we're all just sheep who believe whatever we're told.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
I know. And And the next step is having the government come in and arrest people, for thoughts. And, it happened in China, with that flu. They were, Jack Posobiec actually did a really good interview with a Chinese journalist. And with the population, when it first started outbreaking that flu virus, people were posting about it. Yeah. Online, and the government stepped in and started arresting those that were posting information on. And it's like, is that really what we want to live in? I mean,
the government shall control the narrative.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's
very scary.
Well, Lauren, we want to be respectful of your time. It's been an hour. Thank you so much for coming on. She will be at the Better Discourse event in Milwaukee. We're hosting another one in July during the week of the DNC, which is going to be interesting. So it's kind of going to be the who's who of everyone that's going to be in the city. And, our take on it is, look, the DNC's here. Let's host an event on topics that the DNC most likely will not talk about, or at least angles that they won't talk about. So in the case of Lauren, her panel topic is going to be, what are the reasonable limits and restrictions on immigration? And
so excited.
Yeah, we think they definitely won't phrase
not
the
phrased
question
that way.
It definitely won't be phrased that way. And so Stephen Knight's moderating that one. Carl Benjamin's on the panel along with Graham Elwood. And we have one TBA, so,
because if there's not
interested.
Yeah, that's right. If anyone's interested, let us know. Get suggestions, or if you want to volunteer yourself.
Yeah, and Lauren, I got to ask you one question before you go. So
yeah,
we've been on a.
I have the poll. I have it right here.
Oh, you have the
so
poll.
It's another prognostication. So
okay,
we are.
we're
get out that crystal ball. Well, you've already had it out because
we're Twitter poll happy these days. So that's pretty much
they are fun. I do like them. I've been voting on yours.
Oh, awesome!
So,
thanks.
Which of the following concepts will you see the most of in the Super Bowl commercials, or tweet your own? Wage gap, white privilege, anti-Trump, or pro-choice in the Super Bowl ads?
So which of those will you see the most of?
Okay, well, we got to think about what is most easily condensed into like 30 seconds plus attached to
$2 million
corporate sponsorship.
Right.
I think the wage gap, right? Because
I voted for that too.
That's the minority vote.
I know we are dragging it, tied 8%, way behind
I
anti-Trump.
said anti-Trump in the beginning before we put it up, and so far I'm winning on that. But I don't know. I guess time.
Think about it. There was already that wage gap thing with
the Audi
Amy
commercial.
Schumer.
Remember the Audi commercial too? But Amy Schumer.
Yeah, Amy Schumer. It was like, oh gosh, I think it was Amy Schumer and who's that guy? Seth something. Wait, Amy.
Seth
the
Rogen?
talk show guy?
Seth Rogen?
Yeah, Seth Rogen.
Yeah. Seth Meyers.
No, Seth Rogen.
Okay. They were drinking. Yeah, okay, here it is. It's for I don't actually want to watch it. Okay, Bud Light had a pay gap Super Bowl commercial with Amy Schumer and what is this guy's name? How can you put him in the thumbnail? But he's not in the Seth Rogen. Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah.
3 years ago, we also saw Burger King. They did like the wage gap chicken fingers or something like that. That's it. You can easily put that into a lot of products.
Yeah, I think so.
True.
Audi had a commercial like that I remember from a while back.
I think especially with the DNC coming up, like
it is a different time. A lot can happen in the year.
Anti-Trump thing's gonna be big.
Hey.
Or even like immigration might be one.
Yeah,
like that,
we were gonna put that one on there too.
It didn't make the cut.
Anti-immigration, that was one that or pro-immigration.
Pro-immigration.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that was. Damn it. Yeah, that was gonna go on there too. Well, Lauren,
but you could vote for that in the comments.
Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we love you. We love everything we do, or you do, I should say. We hate everything we do. And Liam, we didn't see him.
Yeah,
so
you guys have been really kicking some ass. Like together, like your banter back and forth is really made me laugh. Like it's really.
Thank you.
That it's pretty fun. So when we were playing video games, listening the whole time, and we were laughing a lot. So
yeah,
it's really enjoyable. If you guys haven't watched
you guys
the content,
have great chemistry.
It's really fun.
Yeah, you guys are growing into an awesome duo where you can play off each other, and these little jabs and jokes are.
They're really good.
Yeah, I love
Thanks. Yeah, the last video we did was a lot of fun. It was we talked about the whole Conor McGregor Trump thing, and that was fun because I do not like Conor McGregor. Well, he's done a lot of stuff. He's a shady character. Liam very much likes Conor McGregor. He says he doesn't, but it's like. you can't really say anything negative about Conor McGregor without him kind of saying, well, I
Perking
mean,
up.
when you think about it, it's like, no. He sent people to the hospital. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the support, and I can't wait to see you guys again.
Yeah.
I hope everyone watching this manages to make it out to Milwaukee. It's going to be fun.
Awesome.
All right,
yeah,
thanks.
Lauren, just stay on for 2 seconds. Go ahead,
Sure.
Mike. Everyone else, we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us.